and welcome back to Zanpakuto Creation Series. I'm a day late, I apologize. It's just a matter of my new schedule. I have my original day off is like Thursday. One of my days off is Thursday. Now it's Wednesday. And I have to be a bit more preemptive, pre-recording when it comes to getting things out on time. We're also in a week of Who Would Wins. So you combine those together, and I'm busy with other things as well. Sometimes I'm going to fall behind, but I'm making up for it. We're doing it now. This one came to us from, who gave me the suggestion? 1 second. We are going to find it out right now, right here together. And that is Greatest Ever, who asked the question, what is Brendan Breyer or BrightBurn's Zanpakuto? So Brendan is a very odd sort because he's a kid. And doing a kid is very difficult to do because kids, as we grow older, our personalities tend to change to some degree or another. There's very few of us in life that have the exact same personality we did when we were, say, 12 or 13, or even younger, or when we were a teenager. So it's very likely that the person that Brendan is could change as he gets older. But a Zanpakuto is ultimately you. It's you physically manifested into a blade with abilities that represent you and your outlook on life, your belief system, who you ultimately are. So with that said, knowing what we know of this character, that he is an alien, he is a Bizarro Superman, basically. Not actually Bizarro, but he's an alternate Superman who is evil, sent to Earth basically like a cuckoo to integrate and destroy, and it kind of enjoys it. What can I deduce about this character that I can turn to a Zanpakuto? Well, first and foremost, what do I think the Zanpakuto is in terms of type? I think my first initial thought was Keto. But the more I thought on it, the more I'm like, it's less Keto and more melee with a Keto-esque ability to it. Similar to, say, Zabimaru does have a Keto-esque ability to it. It can detach and, fire off shots of energy. Ichigo's Zangetsu obviously has Getsu Tensho. There are other examples as well where they are predominantly melee weapons, but they have a special ability within them that could be considered technically a Keto ability. So that's kind of where I see this. Its standard form would still be a katana. 90% of the Zanpakutos are katanas. Its release would be cut. Simple, straight to the point. The name is also very simple in my mind. Sharp Blade, which translates out to Chapeau Ha, or I believe it's Chapeau Ha. And 1 second, I don't think I actually translated the English name for the Bankai out. Hold on. 1 second here. I'm going to get this right in here right now. Let's see here. Sharp. So yeah, okay. So the Bankai is a sharp blood drinking blade. Sharp blood drinking blade. So yeah, so again, the Chika is Shapuhad, or depending on how you word it, it's either Shapuha or Sharudoha. Sharudoha. I like Sharudoha better. The Bankai's name would be actually, it's not Sha in this case. It's no H. Sarudo Chionomuha. Is what sharp blood drinking blade would turn into. And its spirit would take the form in Shikai of like a weasel. A kind of cantankerous but playful weasel, I think. I like the idea of a weasel. But in Bankai, the weasel takes on an almost feral, almost rabid-like a form and appearance. Now, what is the design of the Zanpakuto? Well, the design of the Zanpakuto for me is basically the sword itself remains a sword, but what ultimately happens to it is the blade kind of starts to twist and turn, and more blades turn until eventually you get what is kind of like high tensile like steel fibers wrapped together, but instead of like a circular cord, circular steel cord wrapped together and just round cords, you have basically like this twisted blade that does have a tip and does have edges, but they're all twisted together. And really, it means that this blade almost has no flat side to it. It's not how Jason Voorhees is, midly, but more in the sense that it's just there. Each side has a blade. Even if you were to grab this thing, you would cut your hands. Even though it's technically circular, it's almost a tube. It is a round, curved bladed tube of metal. So what does the Shikai do for an ability? Well, that was a little tricky to think of. I'm like, okay, it's at first I'm leaning towards a Keto ability, but I'm like, okay, it's more of a melee type, but it's probably more of a melee type with a Keto ability. And what I ultimately think what it can do is that if Brandon actually strikes, or Brendan, I believe it is, if BrightBurn, we're just going to call it BrightBurn, it's probably going to be the title of the video. If BrightBurn strikes the blade flat, it actually, not strikes the blade flat, but strikes the tip of the blade on a solid enough surface that it's not just going to puncture it. It actually opens up, and I guess the best way I can think about this is if you are to twist a bunch of cords together, like not very thick cords, but just twist some things together. Like I'm trying to think of a good example of this. If you twist, say, a little bit of fiber together, like thin fiber cords, like even so, let's say, why am I blanking on the name of those things? Basically, they open up and it's almost like it's just hollow in there, a round hollow emptiness in there. If I had like a video, I mean, I don't use videos, but if I had like an image to describe what I'm talking about, you'd probably get it more effectively. But basically, the blade, by striking the blade and pushing on it, the blade basically kind of almost undoes it. That's what it is. That's what I'm trying to get. It undoes itself, and they had this empty hollowness that suddenly reveals, Ryatsu energy, and then he basically just retracts it. It snaps back, and he basically releases out all this energy from it, and that kind of wraps the blade. It wraps around the blade a little bit, releases in a kind of like a bit of a shock wave. It's a weird ability, but it's the Shikai ability. What I think it is, it's a precursor to who he really is. Which leads us to the Bankai. Now, in the Bankai, that is where things change up immensely. I wanted to get an image of something, but I couldn't find a proper image that would really work. But basically, in Bankai, it's still a blade, but the blade's growing a bit longer. And really what's happened to it, if you know Naruto, think of Kisame's blade, Samehada, minus the mouth part, where it's basically these large scales that, as he puts it, the thing doesn't cut, it shaves. Well, think of that kind of design, except it is just all these blades hanging on what looks to be the actual sword itself. Now, the sword is now more like a giant handle at this point. Like, the actual sword is no longer the sword. These blades are the sword. They're pretty big, too, especially for his size. But they're all held together by his Ryatsu, in a similar way that Hihio Zabimaru was held together by Renji's Ryatsu. And basically what happens now is all these blades, connected by this just well of Ryatsu, can basically just attack with enhanced, first off, he can still use it in melee combat, but he can manipulate and move them all he wants, including wrapping them around him, using it like a whip, using it like, firing missiles, but they always come back to the blade. And yeah, what it is that the Ryatsu you see in there, in the Shikai, is really what's kind of holding the blade together. And in the Bankai, that's fully realized that basically the blade of this sword now is actually the Ryatsu. And it's holding all these little metal segments together, and he's using those for attack. Now, obviously, this Shikai would have a lot of downside, this Zanpakuto would have a lot of downside, particularly in the Shikai. It's not a very effective weapon, really, in the Shikai. But, I mean, it's an okay weapon, by all means, and it can still do stuff, but it's the Bankai that's really the crux of power here. This Bankai, though, would be subjected to a lot of problems. Like, it's no good against someone who actually can defend themselves or anyone who's actually pretty competent. Granted, there's enough blades on this thing. Like, there's probably a good several dozen of blades on this thing to, wrap around and protect. But it's sadly not a Bankai that is designed for defense in the grand scheme of things. It also doesn't have a huge amount of attack power. Like, it's not a Kakuja Tengen Myo. It's not that for just sheer attack power. It's not as Nojirashi. It's not a Zangetsu really that can just unleash huge power. Even as a Bankai, this blade it's weirdly precise in what it does. But that's not to say it lacks power. It can still take down hollows and even strong Tsunagami and stuff like that if you worked on it long enough. The problem is it's just this kid is so young and new to this that he would not wield it with any great level of expertise. But still, that is ultimately what I think his blade would be. Or at least the concept of what his blade would be. What would you do with this character, though, if you would do something different? Let me know in the comments below. But until then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. As always, you want us to review something, put in the comments below. Let us know. We'll do a review of it at some point. Hit that bell if you want to be notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.